right, hello folks. We are going to go over how to take our lines from part one, which is exploring our thumbnails, looking at all the different range of things that we can do. The one thing that hopefully we all saw from working with our peers today was noticing our own habits, right? And maybe from top to bottom, you had habits that you hadn't noticed until you could compare yourself to others. That's why it's so important for us to work together, yeah? So, notice your habits, break them, move forward whatever's interesting. These are the lines that I decided to move forward. I really liked the directional lines. There's probably some little bobbles here and there that I would fix, but these are generally my 4 lines. I want to review with you how to remove the tape, yeah? You want to make sure that you are pulling at a diagonal angle, right? About a 45-degree angle away from your artwork. That way, if it catches, you will be tearing paper away from your image and you won't be affecting your paper. This way you have, oops, see, there it goes. See, that's what we want to avoid. That might happen on your work. You want to make sure that if you are, you're pulling in the direction that I mentioned, because it could rip right through your work if you pull it in the other way. Great. Now I would come through and reinforce that with a border. I've done it with one side with pencil. So put a pencil border on that for us so that we have a fully contained. So this is right here, part 1. Done. Those 2 documents are what I want from you. Now what you need to work on. Oh goodness, look what I did. Oh geez, Ann. Oh geez. Okay. So what I worked on was taking my 4 lines. I took my tracing paper copy of each line and I separated them, right? I cut them so that they are their own little shapes. And I started to play around with their location, right? So now this is all about these lines and their proximity to each other, the tension that that creates visually. And this is why I like working with tracing paper. This can be done with your sketchbook too, but it's just a lot easier with tracing paper. So what I'm wanting to make sure is that these lines are both hitting the top and the bottom of my format. I've just taped these here. This is my second piece of Bristol paper, yeah, where I've taped off my 1-inch edge. So this is my 9x9 space. This is 11 inches square. And I've maintained a little bit of a top border just so that I can play around with my Sharpies later when I'm ready to fill in. Yeah, so that's again my workspace. I know that I like those lines there. I want to show you how I got to this though. This line is great. You want to make sure that you are avoiding contact with the edge and contact with each other, right? So I'm really liking the tight pinch that's happening between these 2 lines here up at the top. I like that they kind of flow together and that there's this downward pull that's happening right here. Kind of like that movement that's happening. So these 2 lines I've taped. These 2 lines I've taped down here so that these are kind of like a flap, right? And I can make sure those are the ones I know. I like where these are at. These are laying pretty nicely and pretty solid. So I would tape these 2 down and these 2 are good to go. I want to show you how it is I would come up with the next set of lines, and then how do we think about what's going to be inked in black and what's going to be left white. That is the part where we have to take a big leap of the imagination, or we can plan a little bit, right? So I have some different options for how we could plan out our image. Tracing paper, grid paper, both good options. I'm going to show you how to work on tracing paper, or I mean grid paper. Goodness, Erin. So if I'm looking at the lines that I have in my composition here, and I have them placed where I think I want them to be, first I'm going to make sure that these 2 are exactly where I want them, because these 2 are pretty good, but they are kind of, you know, creating a real strong vertical here. I'm really maintaining kind of like a vertical space. So I'd like to kind of push that and push more diagonals over here on this side and maybe create another point of like pinch or tension. I like how these 2 lines are getting close to each other here. These 2 here. don't know, I kind of like how that feels like a big heavy mass here. And these might feel kind of tight and pinchy once this big mass is kind of filled in. So I'm imagining now, in my mind's eye, I'm trying to picture which of these sections I would ink in dark so that I could get my negative space. Now that section is either going to be these two main sections that run in the middle, this section here and this one here would be inked in black, or I would do three sections. I would do the side as it leads up to the border, this center section here, and then this side. And that way my two main sections in the center would be white. I do feel like they are kind of running like railroad tracks though. I do want to create just a little bit more of a, potentially a twist or a pinch. So I'm gonna play around. That kind of duplicates that shape pretty accurately. I'm wondering if maybe a movement more like this might be fun. So I'm just going to be playing around until I find the combination. Ooh, I like that. See that tension that creates when those two are really close to each other? And that shape? Ooh, I'm really liking. I think I like that. I like the movement. I like how many different ways that it feels like we're being pulled down and out, as well as kind of these sections kind of swelling up at the top here. So I think this is my layout. I like this. I'm going to anchor those pieces down, and now you do your transfer again. Yeah. Let me show you how I would plan out just a little bit though where my darks and lights are. So let's think about where these darks and lights might go and how we could plan that out. The edge of your paper, the border, is this nice black artist tape. You're always welcome to cut it in half visually to create some grid lines for yourself. Now you're welcome to get out a ruler and check yourself, but being able to visually cut a line in half, ooh, I was half an inch off. This is technically halfway. Okay. I think I was probably estimating the top half of that. There we go. So this is our halfway point. Measure it over here too. Yep, that one was much closer. Look at that. That one was right on. Okay, so getting our halfway point established is helpful because it allows us to create thumbnails. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to lay out so we know this is half and half, and now we want to kind of cut it in half visually. What's happening on either side of these crosshairs? On this side we have a swooping out, a coming in. All of this action happens right or above the halfway point. So whenever we're trying to draw from observation, you always want to kind of break down complex information into smaller parts, right? So it's something like this that happens here with this first line. Second line comes in, barely goes past the halfway point and comes and pinches down here. Our second one, out, down, up, over, something like that, yes? And our last one has a nice kind of swoop to it. So I am quite sure that from this composition here, I'm pretty sure I want to ink in the sides. So I'm just going to kind of keep my hand off to the side so I can show you how I would quickly think about this. If you want to have a visual, go back to your thumbnails. If you're not too sure how it will look, sketch it out. Give it a try. Thumbnails are a wonderful way, again, to test our compositions. And yeah, I think I like that. And this is the analog quick way to check the opposite. What about the opposite of this. If I were just to look at kind of like a rough version of this, I'm going to kind of quickly trace again. Remember, this is a thumbnail. We're just generalizing. Do you really want to get like an hour into your drawing and realize, oh, this is boring after all? This has turned into something predictable, something that doesn't exactly capture my attention, right? How is it that you can transition the lines from the order that they were in into an interesting negative space and still maintain our attention and create visual balance, right? That's what we're kind of looking at. How can we create balance? How can we keep the eye in the composition the longest? What happens when the eye moves out? So these are my two options, right? So when I'm envisioning how I might want this to look, you can think about it in your tracing paper or your sketchbook gridded paper, yeah? And now you can either, you know, reapply graphite to the backside, yes, of your line so that it's nice and ready to create line work for you. Or you can slip a piece of graphite transfer paper underneath and get busy. Let's do that. Okay. Oops, so here's where we'll see the transition from off of the graphite transfer paper back to my DIY transfer paper. You can see that there's not much of a difference. You can see how when that line transitioned, right? My graphite transfer and then my DIY version. And now I would go through and I would ink in, I would do the same for each of my lines, yes? Now let's talk about inking, just a little. I have, is it here? It is. I have an area that's already gotten started here where I talk about creating a nice edge. Let's say this is my line that I'm working on. I want to make sure that the edge of that line is nice and crisp, that there are no areas that you have left any of the paper showing. You also want to work in a hatching direction. You might want to go vertically in one area and then come back, do a diagonal across it. And you may want to need to come back one more time for full opacity. We want to avoid stroke marks. I don't want to see any directional lines. If you do just a couple of coats of Sharpie, you should be good. Some people, you're welcome to use the ink, liquid ink. If you feel comfortable with liquid media, you're absolutely welcome to use that too. You want to just have a nice black opaque in your negative space, okay? All right, folks, and then remember, remove your tape. Taping looks great, especially when we have that nice crisp edge, right? So that'll give us that nice crisp border if you choose to put a black on that border, a black edge, right? Your black edges might contain your white negative space, or you might end up doing the opposite. Your edges might have a light edge, and then I do want you to come in and create that border for us on your edge, okay? All right, folks, I look forward to seeing what you put together and which combos will work best for y'all. I'm going to get this uploaded, and hopefully we will have better luck with Zoom in the future. All right, people. Take care. Have a good night. I'll see you later.